Hi, everybody. I'm Glenn Mate, and I'm here with my great co hosts, Tony Ghazi, the Ontarian Heart, and Daniel James. And welcome back to another episode of Journey to the Light. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for being here. Thank you, subscribers, and everybody who's liked our program so far. We really have a great time bringing you some amazing content. And today we have just another great episode. Today we're going to talk about learning the uniqueness of what subtle energy can actually feel like. So we'll go into the rabbit hole a little bit deeper of what we felt, what our experiences are, and where we felt some differences in energies in some of our experiences. So without further ado, Daniel, why don't you take it over and bring it in.
No pressure.
So lots of pressure. So, full disclosure, full disclaimer up front. So our dear friend, Mr. Glenn Mate, he chose tonight's episode. And when I was reading the definition, like the description of the title, I was trying to intuit what that meant to me. So we'll all have our own definition of what that means. But to give my brief perspective is the subtlety of energy is when we're presented with a circumstance in our lives, when something happens, or say, for example, we have an option to choose an A or a B, probable energy in our circumstances in our day-to-day life, in our moment-to-moment. There is what you could interpret as a pre-programmed meaning or a pre-programmed definition to circumstances and to things that happen in our life, whether they're exciting and happy or triggering and upsetting. And what I notice is if you're in a circumstance in the moment and you have the option to choose a reaction, or you have the option to interpret what this circumstance means to you in the moment, there's also a subtleness. There's also another language to what you're being presented with that might not be as obvious as what it seems like in the moment, where it's like, oh no, I got a flat tire, so I'm angry. But what is the more subtle message that hides in the undercurrents and the undertones of energy flow that isn't as quiet and as loud in your face about the inconvenience or how frustrating it might be to be driving your car and have a flat tire? Generally speaking, that's a negative, lower vibrational circumstance that could make us upset. But even in the positive side, it doesn't matter, positive or negative, being neutral, there is a subtle energy language that you can tap into in the moment. And in the subtle language, this language, which has no smell or taste or sight or touch, but it's a feeling that gives you the opportunity. The subtle energy gives you the opportunity to look at the situation more neutrally and choose how you feel that you want to react to it, and as opposed to just reacting through our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings mentally. But the subtle energy could be the opportunity for you to constantly be in control of your state of being. This subtle language is this energy saying, hey, everything is neutral. This might seem like a negative circumstance, or it might seem like a positive circumstance, because sometimes really positive things have this strange sort of like alternate parallel side to them too that comes at a cost, I find. And so I always try to use the subtle language of the subtle energy, and how I feel it and interpret it is in the moment, whether I'm posed with a circumstance to react to, positive or negative. The subtle approach is to sit with it for a moment, breathe my way through the experience, positive or negative experience, circumstance, and allow that subtle energy, that subtle language, that almost quiet whisper that you can hear in every situation that gives you the space to choose. That is what I am practicing now, tonight, and practicing this week, and practicing this month, is approaching all of my circumstances in a way that is more subtle, that quiet voice that doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't insinuate positive or negative, but it's just there, present, giving me the space to choose from a neutral standpoint how I would like to react and how I perceive this circumstance, positively or negatively charged. So, Glenn, I don't know if that's what you meant when you come up with the idea of this episode, but it's fun that we're three people with our own unique perspectives, because that's how I interpreted the answer to be. When it comes to subtle energy, that can only imply that it isn't loud and it isn't obvious. So then you go to neutrology and allow yourself to be.
Daniel, that's awesome. I didn't expect that answer, but that is such a cool answer. I think
Thank you.
That's like boom, right out of the park. You knocked it.
Thank you, brother.
Because, we could go so many different ways about talking about subtle energy. We could talk about Land's subtle energy, but you chose to talk of more of experiencing an emotional type energy. And, instead of reacting, you're kind of deciphering what that
Thank you.
might be by going in and being quiet. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So you're feeling the energy and then you're making the determination. So it's like you're taking something and slowing it down and looking at it through like a stop motion picture.
That's right. Zooming out a little bit.
Right.
And almost like hitting the slow motion.
Right. So that was incredible. Thank you for that perspective. That was insane, but thank you. I love that.
Thank you, brother. Big love,
Tony.
man.
Yes. So you may have noticed that I yawned 3 or 4 times, and I want to say that I'm not bored.
That was subtle energy.
That is subtle energy. But as a channel, like you always have cues when you need to bring messages, and one of them for me is when I yawn, is that I need to go into the state. And I know we just began the show, but I feel like they were already like sent messages. So I feel the need to close my eyes and just bring through a quick channeled message of how the Mantis beings, in a sense, like see that topic, which is always from a grander perspective beyond the word, beyond the word itself. So if that's okay, I'll just jump into it quickly.
Tony, please do. Let's hear what the Mantis Being Collective has to say.
Thank you. And from the Antares Stargate, we come through in this way to be one with you in this beautiful co-creation of time, of now moment. And the idea of what you call subtle energy is simply a concept that is limited to begin with, because there is nothing subtle about your existence. There is nothing subtle about the energy that contains within who you actually are, the pure vessel of love and light that you are made of. Now, from the perspective of limitation, should you want to describe the idea of subtle energy, allow us to explain it in this manner that perhaps will make sense in your reality, that you are the subtle energy of creation itself. Creation is all. Creation is everything that exists all at once, intertwined into the complex web of creation itself in this now moment. And you, as a physical being in this lifetime, are the subtle aspect of that grander energy. And should you begin seeing it from that perspective, that you are that facet, that subtle piece, that little sliver of all right here and right now. It is a beautiful idea of existence itself. But in reality, there is nothing subtle about that creation because you are the power of the source. Regardless of the idea of facet or the piece of, you are energy. And with every emotion that you feel, with every thought that you are able to think, with every belief system that you are able to create and recreate, and with every knowingness of who you actually are, there is nothing subtle about it. Existence is power in itself. It is all in one. So with that, we will end this quick transmission to allow you to think more of the idea of subtle. Because in reality, there is nothing subtle about who you are. There is nothing subtle about your experience. There is nothing subtle about all the facets of who you are that makes up the whole of oneness. With our unconditional love, bright white light, we thank you for this quick co-creation of our realities. I'm hearing right now, I'm back. Illusions, 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 illusions. Illusions of subtle, illusions of disempowerment, illusions of being little, illusions of being not as powerful. It is all illusions. All illusions.
So my interpretation is, one thing I appreciate the mantis beings and their perspective is that there is a overtone in our cosmic language of paradox. It's a core fundamental in the fabric of our reality. And so when they mention that nothing is subtle, and I see the paradox of like when you lean into the subtle, that you can only have that through the contrast of everything not being subtle at all, and vice versa. So I appreciate the paradoxical message there, because it is a language that I understand.
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Mantis Being Collective, for that beautiful, beautiful message. And thank you, Tony Ghazi, for channeling and allowing to be the vessel for that beautiful message. So thank you. That was phenomenal, and also very, very enlightening. And another 10 clicks of opening up the scope.
Yep.
And the aperture of what we think we know, to just keep broadening it. That was amazing.
Thank you. And see, like, this is the thing, like with the mantis beings that I that I keep finding is that their like messages are very broad, like from a very expanded view. But I understand, and like my 3D mind that I'm back here, I understand what subtle energies mean, right? It's all these little like links, all these little hints that you get like along the way. Like if you want to call it voices, if you want to call it intuition, it's all these little, they're there, but because you're not focused on it, it seems to be subtle.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's always there and it's loud, but because your focus is here and instead of here, then it's subtle energy. But when you begin focusing on what's called subtle energy, you realize that it's energy itself, and that's where the power comes in. That's where there's like nothing subtle about it. That's where paradox comes in. So thank you, Daniel, for saying that.
Yeah.
And like again, I don't talk like this. I don't think like I know when they're coming through because I'm like, okay, my brain doesn't think like that, and I never ever in my wildest dream would have articulated such idea. But it's an experiential. It's like a knowingness. They just like take you to that world, and you're like, you just start blah 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 blah, and then it makes sense because you're like being fed the codes. And like you guys know this when you do like your own channeling,
Right?
I just wanted to explain to the audience that.
So, I would have to say that we started out with subtle energy, but maybe I've kind of rescoped this and said, well, maybe we're maybe we need to be more in attunement to the vastness of energy, because the energy is in different frequencies. And just as like if we were to, pass our hand over a crystal or a stone, it may have a certain energetic presence, but the further you get away from it, you don't feel it. And if you don't think that, oh, this piece of crystal, this unique stone has some energy to it, if you didn't think that and you just said, oh, it's just a stone, look at it, it's pretty, here it is, and not be attuned to the fact that it is energy. So when we start to think in, frequency, energy, and vibration, I think Tesla said that pretty well, didn't he? When we start to think of the world in frequency, energy, and vibration, it brings up a whole new opening, a whole new perspective of that. So, when I started thinking of this, I was thinking about maybe some of the subtle energies that we become attuned to. And maybe it's, again, just as the Mantis being said, it's not subtle. It's just energy. And we're becoming attuned to it. Just as, Tony, like you were getting that feeling like, oh, I feel like the Mantis beings wants to come in and speak about this. Well, that's energy, right? Okay. You're tuned to the frequency of the energy of the Mantis beings.
You can define that as that being the subtle energy.
Right. But it's really not subtle, it's just energy.
Totally.
And you have the attunement to say, I recognize that.
Yeah.
That is the sign that if I kind of move my perspective over a side and I move my egoic side over a little bit and I allow this to come through, that I now become the vessel in alignment with that energy.
Right.
And hence, that is channeling. To some degree.
Yeah.
Right? To some degree. It might be different for everybody a little bit. Like when I feel my light language, I feel it right here. I hear it right. It's like, okay, something's going to come up. Something's going to come up. Just let it out. So it's like, oh, now I just sit back and let it come out. And then when I set the intention to do my channeling, I'm like, okay, I'm going to set my openness of my intention to channel Anubis. And now I begin to, it's like scanning, like a radar scanning for that frequency. What does that frequency feel like? What is it? How does it feel? How is it going to come through? And just to allow that space for that to come in.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the perception of the Mantis beings on that.
Thank you. And like what's resonating in my mind right now, oh my goodness. Sorry. I just thought like there's something that came on my head and left. It was weird. That wasn't subtle, by the way. Whatever that was not like, I like literally like felt like this light came to my head and went back. And now I'm losing my train of thought. Wow. Yeah, and like the idea like may have been to begin talking about subtle energies and like realizing that there's nothing subtle about like energy, right? Like the dichotomy of like two words, like subtle and then energy. How can energy like be subtle? It's pure energy. Like it's there. It's just our like perception and our focus. Like again, it's always there. The energy is not changing. It's not increasing in frequency or like decreasing. It's just our perception and our reality and expandedness that allows us to bring that energy into our focus, into our sphere, right?
Right.
And then it's there, and then you feel it, and it's not subtle anymore. It's there. Yeah.
That makes complete sense, Tony. Some of the things that I notice, even when driving in certain places, that you kind of come in and out of certain spaces, and if you drive the same couple of roads every day, whether you're going to work or whatnot, that you know that certain spots feel different,
Yeah, totally.
right? Some places when you're going like through the woods has a different frequency presence, if we would want to call it that, than, when you might be driving in more of a city area that has another energetic presence to it. And maybe people have never even thought of that before. Like, this might be the part of your awakening, of your ascension process, to notice energy. And sometimes you can feel it in your hands, sometimes you can feel it in your stomach. We call that gut reaction. That's an attunement of energy. That's something coming into your body, into the nerve plexuses, that is sending information to your heart and then to your brain to let you know that there's something that you should be aware of.
I agree. I have a fun little story I can share on that note.
Oh, please do.
Lauren and I had a shoot late last night, very late. And this was for a video game fan film that we're making. Just a fun little project for something to do. And we had a friend of ours come over, and we worked pretty late last night. And one of the scenes required us to drive deep, deep, deep into the forest. We went deep into a state park last night, and it was pitch black, no lights whatsoever, clear night, the moon beaming through the trees. And I'd been to this park, no exaggeration, 30, 40 times. I do a lot of filming there. And this is the first time ever in 9-10 years that I had been into this park in the dark. And so when we got there, not knowing what to expect to do our filming, I felt this overwhelming sense of peace and calm and support. There was no fear about being in the woods alone, no fear about the darkness, no fear about nature and animals. We did our filming and everything went excellent. And we were talking to like owls and birds that were up late. And it felt good. The energy of the park felt really inviting, even when it was midnight. So flash forward. We get back to the house, finish our work, and I was taking the actor home who lives in the city. And so I drive the actor home, and on the way home from his house, my GPS took me a strange route that I don't know why it took me this way, but it took us past an old cemetery. Okay? And I don't know why my GPS took me that way, because it shouldn't have. And years ago, when I first moved here, about 9 years ago, my ex-girlfriend and her friends, we went to the cemetery for fun on Halloween night to do like a paranormal investigation. And we had like this like shitty little cell phone camera and stuff. We were walking around in the dark with flashlights, and we had fun. It was cool. It was spooky. It was a fun thing to do on Halloween. We get home and we're watching the recording videos, and we caught an EVP in the recording of the cell phone camera. And I've heard EVPs before. I've caught them in a variety of circumstances throughout my life, but this one was speaking another language. It was like a deep, sort of unsettling tone and cadence, and it really freaked all of us out big time, because it was like a whole sentence of dialogue that you could hear clearly coming through the recording of this camera. And Tony can vouch for a little bit of some paranormal investigations and his orb work. So this EVP was unsettling. And ever since then, 9 years ago, I've always looked at that cemetery different. And I don't often go down that road to get home. So my GPS takes me past the cemetery. And in contrast to how comfortable and welcomed I felt at my park, where I do a lot of my filming, we were deep into the woods earlier that night. Just driving past the cemetery for a stretch of like maybe 40 seconds of driving, I felt a different shift in energy. I reconnected to that EVP and that memory of investigating the cemetery on Halloween night, which like what did I expect was going to happen that night, right? But ever since then, I feel the dynamic. I wanted to tell the story to show you the contrast to being deeply immersed into a state park that we had to drive really far into, where we were alone for several miles in any direction, and we felt completely welcomed and invited and had a great shoot. Exceeded our expectations. It was a lot of fun, and we got home safe. But then just driving past the cemetery for 40 seconds, that I felt like I was on a different planet. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And just a real quick thing, can you tell us or tell the audience what an EVP is if they may not understand.
Yes.
We kind of have an idea.
Electronic voice phenomenon is an audible recording that comes through the recording of an audio or a video recording device that is not heard to your ears. You don't hear it with your naked ears, but it's actually recorded electronically in the device. This is a common phenomenon used in paranormal investigation.
And, where I live here in Monroe, Connecticut, the actual home of Ed and Lorraine Warren,
That's
the
right.
first paranormal investigators, I have a little experience and actually did some acting in a film with their son-in-law, Tony Spira, who now continues on their paranormal investigations. So
Wow.
We gotta go
a little bit of
there.
that
There's some
background.
history there.
So there's some history, and the actual museum of Ed and Lorraine Warren is still here in Monroe, Connecticut, which houses all of their collected artifact, including the Annabelle doll, the original Annabelle doll, and not to go too far down that, but it's just there are some energies there, and there are some energies that can be attached to certain things, just as like we have the intuitive intent to put positivity into crystals, that they are healing, that they are saving. We could put an intention into any particular object, because every object is part of a holographic creation, which is part of the all, which has everything in it. So
That's right.
we could, with our intention, we could put negative or positive polarity
That's
or
right.
neutrality into anything we touch.
And both are equally valid too. And I'll announce here formally on the show that we here at Journey to the Light are not afraid to explore the more shadowy areas and shadowy concepts and shadowy topics of creation.
Right. Because they all coexist as a trinity,
Right.
right? It's positive, negative, and everything in between that it creates within its whole. So it's a three elemental structure,
Yeah.
not just positive.
Balance.
Yeah. So I want to mention one thing, like one thing quickly that's been reverberating in my mind as like you were speaking, and like back to the idea that energy is not subtle, but our perception of our limitation allows us to believe that it's subtle.
Right.
But also on top of that, this is where the layer after layer after layer after layer comes in. Your belief system and your experience allows what you think subtle energy now to become not as subtle. So
Right.
like the fact that you drove by, or like you had the EVP at like the cemetery that like made you feel like a certain way a few years back, and you drove by it this time. What like could have been subtle energy now, because of the definition system and the experience, became energy itself of fear or of doubt or whatever, of like whatever it was. So
It was unease.
unease, right? But it became more pronounced, and it's not subtle anymore. So your belief systems and what you feed your mind does affect the like the experience of what you experience, right?
Right.
So it's funny that through the belief system you experience not subtleness anymore, and it was intense.
Yep.
You know?
That's a good point. It's a good callback.
Yeah. So, and guys, remember, you're the creator. You create your experience through your definitions. You create your reality. You create like those perceptions. You create like the subtleness or non-subtleness of things, because you're essentially creating everything to begin with. But because we feel disempowered that we're not creators, we feel as if it's happening outside in or to us or whatever the case may be. We're the producers of our own show. So if you go into it thinking I'm going to experience something subtle today, you get that reaction, you get that experience. But the fact that we're speaking about the idea, of like subtle, and the next time you have a subtle like experience, I feel like you're gonna tap into the energy. Like itself, and you're not gonna feel subtleness anymore. You're gonna be able to experience the energy directly as energy. Does that make sense? What I said?
That does make sense.
You know, because now you're aware of it. Now you're expanding
Right.
the idea that there is subtle something, and it's out there, and it's, you know, I may be feeling X, Y, and Z. There's like this disempowerment that I don't have the power enough to experience something more than subtle. Right. So the fact that you're here, like listening to this already is expanding your mind that even the idea of the word subtle isn't subtle to begin with.
Right.
Right.
So that's how we expand through all, like through these dialogues, through hearing the stories like Daniel and Glenn and your stories that we would love to hear.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you for sharing that. That was great, Tony. And, so we learned today through our conversation to not necessarily use the word subtle and just to focus in on the energy, right? What energy am I feeling? And not put a describer to it, right?
A definition, in a sense.
I definitely, but just
I
to
like
become attuned, right? So great discussion, guys, today. Another, definitely another thumbs up, another exploration, another perspective, another great 3 perspectives. So Daniel and Tony and the Mantis Being Collective, thank you for your participation today. It was a great episode.
Solid.
Tony, I want to ask you, do you have social media?
Oh, me? You said Tony?
Yeah, Tony,
Oh,
do you have social media?
of course I have social media.
Where can we find you?
At the Antarian Heart. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Oh my goodness, I gotta remember all of them. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. And I have my website, TonyGhazi.com, ToniGhazi.com. And yeah,
Awesome.
Daniel. Yeah.
Daniel.
Who, me?
How can we find you?
Special announcement that I'd like to make. Yes, you can find me on my social media. I love Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, all Daniel James XIX. And a special announcement that I have for myself is pertaining to myself, but I'd like to share this with my friend Tony, is we are working diligently, day and night, on an awesome, awesome film called The Tony Ghazi Story of the Antarian Heart. So we are producing what's called as a brand story film for our friend Tony right now, and I'm excited to announce that the film will be online and available to watch by May 29th of this month. And I'm really proud of it. We're still shaping it and creating it right now and editing. It's coming together and it's on track for about a May 29th release. So I'm very proud of it, and I encourage all of our listeners to watch this short 10-minute film, because a brand story is a very intimate look into someone's life and why they have the passions that they have and why they do the things that they do and why their interests manifested from, to becoming who they are now. So I'm really proud of this. Tony, you're going to love it. Tony hasn't seen it yet. It's not finished, but it will be. So I encourage everybody, if you follow Tony or any of our work, please check out Tony's brand story film, which will be done at the end of this month.
And that was not subtle.
That was great. Daniel, thank you for that. We appreciate you. We love you. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, or X. You can find me at Glenn Divine Phoenix, and you can find me at Glenn Phoenix 365 on YouTube. You can find me on www.divinephoenixhealing.org if you'd like to know a little bit more about my work and what I do and what I offer. And of course, we've got one special announcement that is right behind me here. We have the Stargate Crusader Retreat coming up. It'll be in July on the 14th to the 16th in Madison, Connecticut, on the beach. And you'll have phenomenal presenters like Tony Ghazi. You'll have in the moment filming from Daniel and his beautiful partner Lauren, and we're so excited to have them. And we'll also have people like Debbie Solaris, Rob Gauthier, Tyler Ellison, Nicolette Morgan, Michael Rosenbaum, and Stephanie Torratore. So please come check us out if you'd like to have some more enlightenment, some real immersive experiences, a CE5, a clearing, and learning how to channel, learning how to be the very best version of yourself. We welcome you. So please find us at www.stargatecrusader.com. Thanks everybody for joining us today for this episode. We ask if you really enjoyed it, please subscribe and also hit the like button, and we look forward to seeing you real soon again. Thank you everybody. We love you.